everybody. This is Frankie Abbruzzino with the Francesco Abbruzzino. I'm here today. Granof, he's the managing director of Expert Bail. We're here to talk about prisons, the bail process, and some of the concerns and issues that are out there. How are you doing today, Eric?
Good, Frank. Thanks for having us.
No problem. This is actually pretty interesting because I have a buddy that works for a local bail company. We went to high school together, and he contacted me because he's always concerned that there was this one situation where they let a bunch of sexual predators out that were busted in a sting, and they let them out with just a bracelet. They didn't go through the bail process, and I didn't get the specifics, but he's like, I'm not sure if it's the judge. I'm assuming it's the judges that do that, but he's like, it's putting people's public safety at risk. They're not going through a bail bondsman. They're just releasing them out there, and they could basically just take off if they wanted to.
Yeah, no, when people get released, judges have a lot of different options at their disposal. Commercial bail, your buddy or our network is pretty much one of those options. Those are typically bail agents are backed by insurance companies, and a bail bond is an insurance policy. The other option they have is judges can just make the defendant pay the full amount of the bond to them, or the judge can actually decide to release them through a pretrial service agency, which is a taxpayer-funded group that sits in the court or in the jail that will actually release that individual, put an ankle monitor on them, and then say they're going to supervise them. But, 5 o'clock rolls around and that employee clocks out for the night. That guy's out there now with really no supervision, or no one really carrying, no one has anything on the hook if that guy goes off and does whatever.
Is that really how it works with the ankle bracelets, basically after 5 or whatever time? Because I was thinking it was somehow hardwired into the county sheriff or something.
Well, a lot of them will have private companies that monitor those things, but, people forget to charge them. People, cut them off, and maybe some, they're not monitoring. There's false alarms all the time. So a lot of people think that these monitoring devices are the be-all, end-all to, public safety and the solving the problems of jail overcrowding. But the problem is, the only thing you can be assured of with an ankle monitor is it shows you where the guy was when he typically cuts it off.
Interesting.
And then he goes off and does whatever, and then they'll find him a few months later. Especially when you have, the county responsible for following up on that, and then the sheriff has his hands full.
Right.
He has time to go after all these guys.
So if that's not the solution, what is the solution for the jail overcrowding issue?
Well, I think it's important to understand jail overcrowding, because I think we hear a lot of that nowadays in the media and stuff. And I think the reality of the jail populations is that they've actually gone down nationally. I think 3 of the last 4 years. The only reason this past year hasn't been another downward trend was because California and what's happening out here in terms of all the prisons being overcrowded. So they took all the prisoners and moved them down to the county jails. That was caused the uptick, a significant uptick in the jail populations, and it actually affected the national number. But the big problem is, people are in jail. They're getting arrested for a lot of stuff in those metropolitan cities where you do have overcrowded jails, and the blame often gets put on the bail industry, and people say that people can't afford a bail bond. That's why the jails are crowded, and that's just not true. There really isn't anyone out there who can't afford a bail bond based on the current market conditions and what bail agents do to work with families to create payment plans and do things like that. There's a lot of inefficiencies in the criminal justice system that are pretty much the cause of the jail overcrowding and the processing through that system. It's not commercial bail. If anything, we're the one element that works probably better than anything in making sure that people do show up for court and do have their day in court.
Now, I've never been arrested, so how does that whole process work? Because you only give what? If a bail is $100,000, you have to come up with $10,000. Is that how it works?
So for purposes of simple math, and first off, it's important to preface that bail is regulated differently in every state. And even within states, there's states like Texas that have, I think, 264 counties or something like that. And each one of those counties approaches it a little different. But from a general standpoint, typically someone will get arrested, there'll be charges, they'll get booked, and then a judge or a magistrate will set a bond amount. So for simple math purposes, we'll say it's $10,000.
Okay.
Like I said before, you can put up the full amount of that bond. The family could, so they can go and put $10,000 up with the court. And then if that defendant goes through all their court appearances, and then the case is over, the court will return that money minus any court costs and fees. So, which will typically end up maybe being 10% anyway. So to think that you're going to get all your money back, that never really happens. They'll take something out along the process. Now, the other option is you can go to a commercial bail agent where you're basically buying an insurance policy. So you're going to put up a $10,000 bond. On average around the country, it varies, 8% up to 15%, but I'd say 10% for an even number. You'll put up $1,000, and that's a non-refundable $1,000 that goes to that bail agent to purchase that insurance policy. Now, what that bail agent will do is they'll make sure that you show up for court, and because if you don't, he is on the hook now for the bond. He's on the hook for that $10,000. So he's going to go out of his way to make sure that you know when your court dates are, remind you the night before, the week before, and then if you don't show up, he's going to call you and make sure that you do get up back to court.
Or go get the dog.
Well, I usually time how long it is before someone brings that. But when you talk about fugitive recovery agents like Dwayne Chapman, dog, everyone knows him as. It's a little bit of a glorified industry. I think Hollywood and reality television and crime novelists have even glorified that element of the bail process because, like I said, bail is an insurance product being sold by insurance salesmen that happen to be called bail bondsmen. If I were to, create a reality television show about an insurance agent underwriting an insurance policy, it'd be the most boring television show in the world. So they gravitate on that 1% or half of 1% of people that say, forget this, I'm not showing up, I'm taking off. And a lot of times, bail agents will go do that recovery by themselves, but every once in a while they'll bring in a fugitive recovery agent, which a lot of them are typically former law enforcement, former military. They have very strong backgrounds. They're trained very well. They'll go out and get those guys back, which is, one of those things that makes bail so effective is that those defendants know that, hey, if I don't show up, I know someone's going to come and get me, as opposed to if I know I was released through the courts and I had someone working in a pretrial service office agency monitoring me and tracking me. If I don't show up, I know no one's going to come get me. I know a warrant's going to be issued. It's going to be put on a stack of warrants at the police department or sheriff's office. And then eventually I'll get caught if I get pulled over for committing, a traffic violation or committing another crime. Then they'll find me for that other warrant.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. With the criminals that are out there, how are these individuals who break laws out there, how are they being held accountable besides just throwing them in jail? Is there any accountability out there when they're released? And I guess that's the calling issue. They got to call you guys. They got to.
I think the accountability comes in the fact that when someone's released on a commercial bail bond, and a financially secured bond, which means that they've got money on the line, the bail agent has money on the line, the family typically has money on the line. That's where you've created this circle of influence around this defendant to make sure they show up. We think the accountability is in the fact that they're going to show up for court. Because if there's a crime victim out there, someone that's been victimized, you want to make sure that person has their day in court. So when that defendant shows up for all their court appearances, you know that there's going to be a chance at justice happening for that individual or for even the defendant. Now, when that person doesn't show up for court, the county spends a ton of money preparing for a trial that never happens. You have a victim that's basically been re-victimized. I mean, the University of Texas at Dallas just did a study, and it quantified how much it costs when someone doesn't show up for court in Dallas County, and it was $1,700, a little over $1,700 per defendant.
Wow. That
the taxpayers pay when someone doesn't show up. Now, that doesn't take into social costs, because that guy's out there maybe potentially committing more crimes. So there's a lot at stake from a taxpayer standpoint, from a public safety standpoint, and we like to think that commercial bail really maintains that accountability in the system to make sure that people are having their day in court, that victims get a chance at justice, and that taxpayers aren't getting, given the cold shoulder when it comes to wasting money to have a trial that never happens.
See, and I did not realize the cost was that high for a missed court date, about $1,700.
Yeah, well, they calculated over the year. I think it ended up being over $11 million that was saved by Dallas County.
Yeah.
And that's just one county, $11 million by using commercial bail as opposed to other forms of release.
Now, you said that a lot of people would credit the fact that jails are overcrowded because the bail is set too high or something. It's not really the bail set too high. You said they blame the bellsman. What's that connection there? Because I mean, there's other variables that go into overcrowding, but that's one of them.
There's so many things that go into overcrowding, but I think the easy scapegoat, and when you have a public sector pretrial community that really doesn't like the concept of what they refer to as money bail, is how they refer to the financially secured bail industry. It's very easy to kind of point the finger at us. And also, when you have an industry that has a reputation like we do, that's been generated by the media of being these guys running through the streets with bulletproof vests, I think we're an easy target for that. And our job is to try to educate people that bail doesn't really play that role. More than 50% of bail agents in this country are women. That's not something a lot of people know because it's a little less glamorous potentially than the guys running through the streets. But bail serves a pretty important role in making sure those people show up. But when it comes to jail overcrowding, the easy argument is that people are sitting there. The argument they make against is that 70% or 80% of the people in the jails are sitting there because they can't afford a bail bond. But if you look at the people that are actually in those prison populations, what you'll find is that there's people there that are on probation violations who are not eligible for bail. There's people there that have committed a crime, even though they're in pretrial status, it's too violent that they can't be released, or they're there awaiting trial, transfer to another jail or transfer to prison, or they're there on an immigration hold. So you have a lot of people that are potentially in those jails for other reasons. Even though they're in pretrial status, it doesn't mean they're necessarily eligible for bail. In LA County, they did a study where initially it was 70% of the population of the jail was pretrial. And when you removed all those people, only 12% of those people were actually bailable. And those 12%, those people do typically get out. When you've got family members and you've got bail agents, they're working together, they'll find a way to make sure that person gets home to go to work and take care of their family.
That makes me wonder if the requirements to get bail are too difficult. Because you said anybody that violates a probation's easy to violate. It could be someone just going next door or down the road, right? And you're violating a probation. You walk by a strip club you weren't supposed to, or your buddy's a convicted felon. He stops by your house. They get wind of it, and you're in violation of your probation.
Man, whatever those restrictions are, they're.
Are they too strict? Do you think?
Yeah, that's probably a question a little beyond my realm, but say whether something's too strict or not. But I think that if you're gonna, we all have the right to bail. It's in the Constitution, the Bill, right? It's making sure that if you are going to let somebody out pre-trial, listen, I've got young kids at home. Other people have families out there. The bail industry is comprised of people with families taking care of other families. We don't just let people out, and I think that's the misperception. A judge determines whether someone's eligible for bail. What the bail industry does is they work with the family. Our customer isn't the guy in jail. Our customer is the family of the guy. We're working with them to facilitate the release of that individual, and we want to make sure that if that person's going to get out, that they're going to show up for court, and that they're not going to be out there committing additional crimes while they're out there. So, bail agents take this responsibility pretty strongly, and they're going to go out. They don't want to be the guy that lets someone out that goes out and hurts somebody. So they're going to make sure that they, that go through that underwriting process to look at all those things, look at the guy's background, look at how many people in the family are going to be around that, because that defendant doesn't want to mess his family over either, because if Aunt Jenny puts up her house, nephew Nikki's not going to want to run away, so she loses her house. So there's that financial incentive in that kind of sphere of influence or circle of love that we create through that process to make sure that he's going to perform and show up for court.
What percentage of these guys, though, that are out on bail recommit a crime? Is there a percent out there?
It's low. When typically people, as compared to when they're out to a pretrial service agency or out on their own recognizance with no one really watching them at all,
yeah.
When someone has family involved, when someone has their money on the line, their own, they're not only going to make sure they're not only going to show up for court more often than not. And when you look at the failure to appear rates of the bail industry and how many people eventually don't go to, you're talking in the 0.5%, 2%. Just you have to, because of the math. If you think about it, I'm a bail agent. I'm putting myself out there $10,000 I'm responsible for, and I'm only collecting 1,000. If I get 9 out of 10 guys back, I go out of business. I got to get 99 out of 100 guys back, or the math doesn't work. And for the fact that the bail industry's been around as long as it has, it shows you that we're effective in what we do. And so we have to be in those less than 1%, less than 2% failure to appear rates and getting those people back to court. And more often than not, when you're showing up for court, when you have family involved in your bail, you're not out there committing additional crimes because you don't want to get in trouble and have them get, financially responsible for that.
Well, let me ask you this. With the immigration issue that's happening with the border, do you guys expect an uptick in the number of people you're going to have to be bailing out, maybe due to overcapacity at the prisons, due to crimes by some of the immigrants that are coming in? Because a lot of people are saying a lot of them are gang related. And
yeah, no, if I could know the future and know how many people are going to commit crimes, I'd probably use that gift elsewhere.
Have you guys ever noticed an uptick when the immigration flow increases? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that it would logically make sense that if you have more people out here that have a bend towards maybe doing illegal activity, that you're going to see an increase. But a lot of our business is driven by arrests, and when there's room that maybe they arrest more people to fill up that space. So we're really driven by the people that are kind of put through the system and what happens there. So there's a lot of that's out of our control leading up to that. But like I said, our focus is to make sure that when people are in that system is going to work as effectively as possible, and making sure that people do show up for court, making sure that victims get a chance at justice, that the public's kept safe, and that the criminal justice system has a chance to work. I mean, think about it. The promise that we make through a commercial bail bond is pretty much the only thing that's guaranteed in our criminal justice system whatsoever, with someone standing behind it. And when you think about bail in that way, it becomes a very powerful, compelling part of the system that we think is indispensable and really helps keep things the wheels of justice in a way moving.
Yeah, and I think bail bondsmen are definitely appreciated and are a credit to the community, because you want them there to help some people that are at disadvantage and can't afford a $10,000 bail that can go to you guys. I think a lot of people have that perception, though, like you said, where the bail bondsman is just letting this criminal out in the street and they're not really watched that closely. Unfortunately, I think that's a perception out there by a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you go to our website, expertbail.com, we have a whole section there called Making a Difference, and it's stories about bail agents that are doing things in their community, starting nonprofits to help, cure cancer, or putting together organizations that help young boys that get in trouble to mentor them to get them out of trouble, or young women that get pregnant as teenagers, helping them get college scholarships so that if they do decide to have the child, to maintain their education. So, I mean, once again, I think it's easy to put that stuff on television and in the movies, and really position bail agents as scumbags, because you can sell more movie tickets that way. You sell a lot less movie tickets talking about
the insurance agent.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I've talked to media outlets where we had a woman the woman that started the organization that helps the teenage girls that get pregnant, and we said, hey, we have this great event happening where these college scholarships are going to be awarded to these young girls. Would you like to come cover this? And they said, oh, no, we already have our bail story. We have these women in tight tank tops running through the streets with their pink handcuffs. And that's what people want to kind of portray the industry as. I mean, there's so much good, but unfortunately, it's the bad that seems to get more eyeballs for the media for some reason.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your site? Now, you're basically a network where if I went in and typed in my zip code to see if there was a bail bondsman when I went in on your site. And that's basically it. If you're in trouble, you need a bail bondsman, you go to your site, which is expertbail.com, right?
Yep.
And go ahead, take it from there.
No, and I think, we saw about 4 years ago, and I work for an insurance company, the largest insurance underwriters in the country. And so what we saw about 4 or 5 years ago was that consumers don't know a lot about the bail industry, and there really wasn't a national kind of branded entity in the industry that could help guide and educate people about this process. So we created Expert Bail as the first national brand, a kind of an endorsement brand, to be able to put on agents around the country that consumers, if they saw that brand, they'd say, okay, I can trust that guy. I know things are going to go well, and he's going to treat me the right way. And so we created expertbail.com, the site, to educate people about bail, to help them find a trusted agent, and to really kind of just make sure that, if people needed, at a time where you're really confused and you're scared, you don't know what to do, that there'd be that trusted resource for you to be able to kind of find out how that process works, and then to find someone to help you get it. And so you go to that site, type in your zip code, and a list of agents will come up. You can call one of them, you can call us, and we'll help locate an agent for you. There's videos that teach you about the bail process. We write a great blog. It has a post pretty much every day, and it's kind of funny stories out there of people doing things where someone posts something on Facebook of them siphoning gas out of a police cruiser and then realizes why they got, or kind of confused why they got arrested the next day. So, but we just try to make it a little entertaining and enjoyable at the same time, kind of educate people about something that's pretty important.
Well, and you know what? From a common folk, someone like myself that's never really been arrested, I think when I was 18 I had an open container, but that was 30 years ago, over 30 years ago. I wouldn't know what to do. So sites like yours are beneficial because I can go there, I can watch the video, I can get some insight, I can, you get that warm, comfy feeling when you're going through a network like yours trying to find a bail bondsman versus going down where you see a bunch of, generally my buddy's place, and his name's Dennis, he has like some thug that's usually sitting in front, and I'm thinking, I don't want to go near there.
Yeah, no, it's you talk to a lot of consumers, and when we did this process, we talked to a lot of consumers and bail agents just about how that process works and their experiences, and most people are scared to death. I mean, I listen to a lot of phone calls throughout the day, and most of the calls are like the person starts off, I kind of don't really know what my husband was, or my boyfriend, or my wife, and it's interesting to listen to that fear. And then when you have someone that can explain that process to them, you can see the fear kind of gets alleviated a little bit. And you talk to a woman bail agent about when that someone first comes in their office, and the expectation that person has, it's going to be some guy that they're going to be scared of. It's going to be some huge muscle-bound guy. He's going to have a cigar. It's going to be a dingy room, and I'm basically going to be signing my firstborn child away. And the reality is, someone walks in that office, they see a woman, that woman's there to help, or they see that bail agent that's friendly, and there's like a weight lifted off their shoulders that they realize, oh, this is what it's like. It's not what so it's something that you kind of unfortunately have to kind of go through to experience, but what we're trying to do is put a little bit of that experience before it ever happens, so that people maybe can approach it in a more positive, confident way with a little less fear.
Yeah, and don't take this the wrong way, but I hope I never need your services.
Yeah, but it's a very common tagline in bail is that you never want to need us, but you want to know us if you have to need us or something. There's a lot of taglines around that.
Why don't you go ahead and plug your site one more time? If you have an email you want anyone, or Facebook or any of that stuff that people can reach out to you at.
Yeah, it's www.expertbail.com, and we're on Facebook. We have about 20,000 fans on Facebook. Like I said, we post our blog every day. Website's got great information, great videos, things like that. And if you want something to kind of amuse yourself, definitely check out our blog.
Okay, and to the listening folk, I do have it on the banner there, and when I put this out on YouTube, I will put links to his website and his Facebook page. Well, thanks a lot, Eric. It's been great interview, and you actually, I love these interviews because I always learn something. Like, I did not realize you guys were insurance agents at all.
Yeah, no, it's regulated by the Department of Insurance, just like auto, health, and home guys, too.
Never expected that one, so that's why I love doing these interviews. Well, thanks a lot, Eric. You've been great.
Thank you.
All right.
Nice talking to you.
Good time to you. See ya.
Bye-bye.